My name is Leora Vance and my family is waiting for me to die. Everyone in my house prays before bed. I just never knew they were praying for me to stop waking up. The silver wind bell above my window sways with the ocean wind, soft and fragile, almost human. Its chime used to bring peace. Now it sounds like confinement. Every note reminds me how small my world has become. A chair by the window, pills lined like soldiers on the nightstand. The faint rhythm of my sister's footsteps in the hall, steady and patient and rehearsed. Visitors see smiling portraits and charity plaques with my name engraved on marble. They call me generous, they call me blessed, but behind every framed smile, envy blooms like mold in a dark corner. I used to think love could survive anything. Now I know nothing dies faster than love waiting for an inheritance. The bell rings 3 times in the evening wind. I count each one like a heartbeat I'm not supposed to have. The house is filled with echoes, laughter captured in photographs, memories polished until they look kind. People see the portraits of Corin and Marilyn, my younger siblings. They see a proud sister who gave them everything. They don't see the shadows behind those smiles, the jealousy that grew each time my name appeared in a newspaper, each time I cut a ribbon for another orphanage or school. I built homes for the broken. They built resentment for the one who built them. Sometimes I look at our family portrait in the hall. My smile seems genuine. Theirs look like masks trying to remember how to breathe. Corin stands tall in his expensive suit. Marilyn wears pearls I bought her. Both of them stare at the camera like they're already calculating something. I remember the day that photo was taken. The photographer said we looked like the perfect family. He was half right. We looked perfect. After my heart surgery, they insisted I recover at home. You've done enough, Leora, Marilyn said softly. Let us handle everything. They handled it, my meals, my medication, my accounts. They moved through my life like nurses of convenience and heirs in training. Corin visited daily, always with that polished grin, the one he used for cameras and business partners. He spoke of gratitude, but his eyes followed every pen I touched, every document on my desk, every checkbook left open. It took me weeks to realize they weren't managing my care. They were managing me. The medicine made me foggy, the isolation made me quiet, and their kindness made me blind, until the day I found the carbon paper. One small piece left behind on my desk, my signature pressed faintly over words I never remembered signing. Estate consolidation. That's when my heart didn't race, it slowed, like it was finally listening. One morning they brought a stack of papers to my room. Routine transfers, Corin said, setting them on the table beside my untouched breakfast. You just need to sign here. The words on the pages blurred together. Medication had that effect. My hands trembled as I held the pen. I trusted them, they were family. I signed where they pointed, 6 pages, maybe 7. Corin smiled and gathered them quickly, folding them into his leather folder. Marilyn squeezed my shoulder. You're doing great, she whispered. Just rest now. That night when the drugs wore off and my mind cleared, I noticed something on the floor, a scrap of carbon paper, thin and blue and almost invisible. I picked it up and held it to the light. My name was pressed into it, and beneath my signature were words I'd never seen before: estate consolidation, beneficiary transfer, irrevocable trust amendment. My pulse didn't spike, it steadied. Like my body finally understood what my mind had been whispering for weeks. The wind picked up that evening. The silver bell above my window chimed 3 slow notes. It didn't sound like comfort this time. It sounded like a countdown. I sat in my chair and watched it sway against the light of dusk. The ocean beyond my window was dark and restless. Waves crashed against the rocks below the house. I used to find that sound soothing. Now it sounded like something trying to break through. I whispered to myself, not yet. The bell rang again. Once, twice, 3 times. I pressed my hand against the cold glass and felt the vibration of the wind. My reflection stared back at me. Thin, pale, tired, but not dead, not yet. I thought about the carbon paper folded in my drawer. The words printed there like a confession they didn't know they'd left behind. And I realized something. Fear isn't weakness. Fear is the moment before you decide to fight back. The phone rang mid-morning 2 days later. A man's voice, young but careful. Mrs. Vance, this is Evan Dray, legal associate at Harper & Cross. I just need to confirm some details regarding your succession plan. My throat went dry. I gripped the armrest of my chair. What succession plan? There was a pause, long enough for me to hear my own pulse in my ears. The one filed last month, he said slowly. Under your signature. I closed my eyes. My voice came out steady even though my hands were shaking. I didn't file anything last month. Another pause, then his tone shifted. Mrs. Vance, I think we need to talk. That phone call lasted 12 minutes. By the end of it I knew 3 things. Someone had forged documents in my name. My estate was being transferred without my knowledge, and I was running out of time to stop it. When I hung up, the bell outside chimed once, like approval. My tea began to taste different, bitter, metallic, like pennies dissolving on my tongue. I started pretending to drink it. I'd lift the cup to my lips and set it down when Marilyn wasn't looking. Then I'd pour it into the orchids on the windowsill. Within 3 days their petals turned black. They curled inward like burned paper. By the 5th day they fell away like ashes. The stems stood bare and brittle in the ceramic pot. Marilyn brought my tray the next morning. She set it on the table with her usual soft smile. "Chamomile," she said, "your favourite." I picked up the cup and looked at her. "Stronger brew today." Her smile flickered, just for a second. Then it returned, smooth and practiced. "Just how you like it," she said. I took a sip and let the liquid sit on my tongue before swallowing. That's when I realised something. Fear is the only power you haven't used yet. And they had no idea I'd started using it. Each morning, sunlight broke through the frosted glass wall of my study. It scattered into 1,000 shards across the wooden floor. I started counting them. 43 on cloudy days. 50 when the air was clear. It gave me rhythm. It gave me control. It reminded me that the world outside still existed, and maybe I could reach it again. The bell chimed softly in the morning breeze. I watched the light move across the floor as the sun climbed higher. My body was weak, but my mind was sharper than it had been in months. I kept the carbon paper folded in my desk drawer. I kept Evan Dre's business card tucked inside my Bible, and I kept pretending to be the dying woman they thought I was, because the best weapon is the one your enemy doesn't see coming. I smiled at the sunlight. 50 shards today. That felt like a good omen. Corin came by that evening. He smelled of cologne and deceit. "You look radiant," he said, though his eyes were already drifting toward my desk. "Don't worry about finances. I've arranged everything." I smiled faintly. "I'm sure you have." He moved to the window and looked out at the ocean. "You've worked so hard your whole life, Leora. It's time to rest. Let us carry the weight now." His voice was smooth, rehearsed. I wondered how many times he'd practiced that line in the mirror. He turned and patted my hand. His palm was cold. "Just rest, sister. You've worked enough." But as he walked toward the door, I noticed something, the faint glint of the bell's reflection on his watch, silver and sharp, a reminder that time was still mine to keep. He paused at the doorway. "We're hosting a gala next month," he said, "a tribute to your legacy." I nodded. "That sounds lovely." He smiled and left, and I sat there counting my heartbeats, each one a small rebellion. I contacted Asher DeLeanne the next morning. He was a forensic accountant I'd once funded through a scholarship 15 years ago. His mother had been sick. His family had been drowning in debt. I paid for his education without asking for anything in return. Now I was asking. When I told him everything, his voice didn't waver. "Send me whatever you can," he said, quietly. "I'll find what they've buried." I mailed him copies of the carbon paper. I forwarded emails Corin had sent about routine account updates. I gave him access codes to files I wasn't supposed to remember. Asher worked fast. Within a week he called back. His voice was tight. "Mrs. Vance, you need to see this." It was the first time in months I felt something close to faith, not in miracles, in people who still remembered kindness. I pressed the phone to my ear and listened. And with every word he spoke, the ground beneath my siblings began to crack. Within 2 weeks, Asher found more than I feared. Ghost accounts under my name, false transfers to offshore holdings, signatures that matched mine but were dated on days I was hospitalized. "They're not just waiting for you to die," he said over the phone. "They're preparing to own you before that happens." I hung up and stared at my reflection in the darkened window. The woman looking back at me wasn't the same one from 3 months ago. My pulse was steady. My hands no longer shook. I could see the outline of the wind bell outside, swaying gently in the night breeze. It rang once. Soft and clear, like approval, I whispered to the glass, "You picked the wrong woman to bury." My reflection didn't argue. For the first time in months I looked like someone worth saving, someone who wasn't finished yet, someone who still had a voice, and I was about to use it. That night I stood before the mirror in my bedroom and met the woman staring back. She wasn't weak, not anymore. Her eyes held something sharp, something reclaimed, the kind of look that doesn't beg for mercy. I ran my fingers through my hair. It had grown longer during my recovery. Silver streaks I used to hide now looked like war paint. I straightened my shoulders. My body was still healing, but my spirit had already recovered. "You picked the wrong woman to bury," I whispered again. This time I meant it as a promise. The reflection looked back at me like an old friend I'd forgotten, someone who used to build empires, someone who used to stand on stages and shake hands with mayors and cut ribbons in front of crowds. She was still in there. She'd just been waiting. I smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of someone who'd finally stopped pretending. And for the first time, the reflection looked like someone who could win. The next morning, Marilyn left a bouquet of white roses on my bedside table. Her gesture of love, she said, white roses, funeral flowers. I stared at them for a long time, counted the petals, watched the way the sunlight caught the edges. They were beautiful and they were a message. I left them untouched. Day by day, the petals browned. They curled inward and fell one by one onto the table. A countdown reversed. Every time one hit the surface, I whispered a name. Corin. Another petal fell. Marilyn. Another, and finally Leora, because I was coming back to life too. By the end of the week, the roses were bare stems in cloudy water. Marilyn came to collect the vase. She frowned. You didn't like them. I met her eyes. I loved them, I said. They reminded me how things die when you stop feeding them. She paused, then forced a smile. I'll bring fresh ones. Don't bother, I said. I prefer something that lasts. Asher became my secret voice in the dark. He sent coded messages through emails that looked like spam. Subject lines that said things like light equals truth and bell equals time. To anyone watching, they were junk. To me, they were lifelines. He found witnesses, a nurse who'd been asked to alter my medication logs, a banker who'd flagged suspicious transfers but was told to ignore them, a lawyer who'd been pressured to backdate documents. We built a quiet empire of evidence. Invisible but unbreakable. Justice is slow, Asher told me one night over the phone, but it's patient. I smiled at the wind bell outside my window. So am I said. He laughed. It was the first time I'd heard that sound in months. Real laughter, not the polite kind people use around the dying, the kind that means someone believes in you. I hung up and looked at the files spread across my desk. Every page was a nail in their coffin, and I was just getting started. One evening my doctor came to visit. Their doctor, really, the one Corin had insisted I see after the surgery. He sat beside my bed and flipped through my chart. Your body is failing faster than expected, he said. His eyes avoided mine. I recommend stronger medication. A new prescription to help with the pain. I studied his face, the way his jaw tightened, the way his fingers tapped the clipboard twice before setting it down. I'll pass, I said. He blinked. Mrs. Vance, I really think it's necessary. I shook my head. I'm fine with what I have. His mask slipped for a second, just a flicker of panic in his eyes. They won't like that, he said quietly. Then he caught himself, cleared his throat. I mean your family, they're concerned. I smiled. I'm sure they are. He left without another word. That night I didn't pray for safety, I prayed for the truth. And the wind bell answered with silence, the kind that means God is listening. A brown envelope arrived by courier 3 days later. No return address, just my name written in careful black ink. I opened it alone in my study. Inside were copies of documents Asher had uncovered, transfers to Corin's shell company, prescriptions altered under my name, a forged life insurance update naming them as sole beneficiaries. It was all there, cold and immaculate proof, every transaction, every lie, every signature that wasn't mine. I spread the pages across my desk and stared at them. My hands didn't shake, my breath didn't catch, I just felt something settle deep in my chest, certainty. The wind outside rose into a storm. Rain began to patter against the windows, and the bell sang for the first time in months, not a soft chime, a full, ringing declaration, like it had been waiting for this moment too. I gathered the papers carefully, slid them into a folder, and smiled, because now I had everything I needed, and they had no idea what was coming. I sent the documents to Evan Dre, the young lawyer who'd first called me. I included a handwritten note. These are the people who prayed for my death. When he called me 2 days later, his voice was quiet but steady. Mrs. Vance, he said, they've trapped themselves. Every transaction binds them legally to fraud, elder abuse, forgery, financial exploitation. I closed my eyes. Good, I said, then let's make it public. There was a pause. Are you sure? He asked. This will destroy them. I opened my eyes and looked at the wind bell swaying outside. Yes, I said, I'm sure. Justice doesn't always shout, I thought. Sometimes it just waits for the right stage. And I was about to give it the biggest one they'd ever seen. Evan cleared his throat. There's a gala next month. Your siblings are hosting it, a tribute to your legacy. I know, I said, I'll be there. He hesitated. Mrs. Vance, are you strong enough to attend? I smiled. I wasn't, but I am now. Corin and Marilyn organized the charity gala like a funeral I was supposed to miss. A tribute to Leora Vance's legacy, the invitations said. Gold script on cream paper, my name in letters bigger than theirs, my portrait printed on banners that would hang in the ballroom. They thought I'd be too weak to attend, too medicated, too close to death. They were wrong. I spent 2 weeks preparing. Physical therapy every morning until I could stand without trembling, Chinese letter, walking without a cane. I picked a dress the color of the wind bell, silver, shimmering, the kind that catches every light in the room. On the night of the gala, I stood in front of my mirror one last time. The woman staring back looked like someone who'd returned from the dead. And in a way I whispered to my reflection, "Let's go show them what a ghost looks like." Then I walked out of my room. Down the stairs, through the front door, and into the car that would take me to their reckoning. I arrived at the gala just as Corin took the stage. The ballroom was filled with people I'd known my whole life, donors, journalists, business partners, politicians, everyone who'd ever shaken my hand or cashed a check I'd signed. Corin stood beneath a spotlight, microphone in hand. His voice dripped with false affection. "She has been an angel among us," he said, "a woman who gave everything to those in need." The crowd nodded. Some dabbed their eyes. Behind him, a massive screen showed photos of me. Cutting ribbons, shaking hands with children, smiling at cameras. Then the projector flickered. Corin paused, frowned. The screen went black for 3 seconds. When it lit up again, it wasn't my smiling face. It was a bank statement, account transfers, dates, amounts, signatures. The crowd gasped. Corin turned. His face went pale. Another slide appeared. Prescription records, medication logs, forged documents. Marilyn screamed from the back of the room, "That's a lie," but the screen kept going. Audio clips played through the speakers. Corin's voice, clear and cold, "Make sure she takes the full dose. We can't afford delays." The room exploded with whispers. Marilyn pushed through the crowd, her face twisted with panic. "This is a fabrication," she shouted. "Someone is trying to destroy us." Corin grabbed the microphone. "This is slander. We'll sue whoever's responsible." But Evan Dre stepped forward from the side of the stage. He held a folder thick with documents. "The investigation is active and ongoing," he announced, his voice calm and clear. "These are certified records from 3 independent audits." He looked directly at Corin. "And they've been submitted to the district attorney." The room went silent. Then the reporters moved, phones lifted, camera flashes exploded like lightning. Questions were shouted from every direction. Corin tried to speak, but his voice cracked. Marilyn turned and ran toward the exit. Security blocked her path, and I stood there, in my silver dress, beneath the chandelier lights, finally breathing freely. I didn't say a word, I just listened to the sound of their world crumbling. And I thought of the wind bell back home. 3 notes like a curtain closing. The show was over, and I was still alive to see it end. The news spread within hours. By midnight, every major outlet had picked up the story. Prominent siblings accused of elder abuse and fraud. Charity icon's family allegedly prayed for her death. Corin's business partners withdrew by morning. Marilyn's accounts were frozen by noon. Their faces were everywhere. Mugshots, courtroom sketches, headlines that would follow them forever. Their world crumbled faster than I'd imagined. Corin fled overseas but was stopped at the airport. Marilyn tried to claim mental distress. Neither of them could explain the documents, the signatures, the recordings. For years I built foundations for others. I gave them schools and shelters and second chances. Now God was dismantling the rotten foundation beneath my own family. Brick by brick, name by name, and I didn't have to lift a finger. I just had to survive long enough to watch. That night I sat by my window and listened to the wind bell. It rang softly, 3 times. And I whispered a prayer I'd never said before, "Thank you for letting me live." When I came home that night, the house was quiet. No footsteps in the hall. No whispered prayers behind closed doors. No Marilyn bringing poisoned tea. No Corin rifling through my desk, just silence, the kind that feels like peace. I walked through every room, turned on every light, opened every window. The ocean air rushed in, carrying salt and freedom and the sound of waves crashing against the rocks below. I stood in the center of the living room and looked at the family portrait on the wall. Corin in his expensive suit, Marilyn in her pearls, me in the middle, smiling like I believed in them. I took it down, carried it to the fireplace, and watched it burn. The flames licked at the edges of the frame. The glass cracked, the faces blackened and curled. And when it was nothing but ash, I swept it into a dustpan and threw it away. Then I went to my bedroom. The wind bell hung outside, gleaming in the moonlight. No longer a symbol of waiting, a symbol of release. I sold the estate 3 months later. Every polished inch of marble that once trapped me became someone else's problem. The furniture, the paintings, the chandeliers that had watched me suffer in silence, all of it went to auction. I kept 3 things: the wind bell, my Bible, and the red folder that held every ignored document they'd made me sign. Corin was sentenced to 8 years. Marilyn got 6. Their lawyers tried to appeal. The judge denied it. I didn't attend the sentencing. I didn't need to. I already knew how it would end. They'd sit in cells and think about the sister they tried to bury. And every night they'd wonder if I was still alive, still breathing, still free. I didn't celebrate, I didn't throw a party or make a speech. I simply packed my things, looked around the empty house one last time, and whispered to the walls, "I forgive you for keeping their voices." Then I walked out, lighter than I had been in years. The wind bell chimed behind me. 3 soft notes. Like a benediction. Months later, I opened the Vance Sanctuary, a home for women recovering from manipulation and loss, women whose families had turned on them, women who'd been told they were worthless, women who needed someone to believe in them again. The first building overlooked the sea. Sunlight spilled through its glass walls every morning, warming faces that had forgotten how to smile. I planted white roses by the entrance, not symbols of mourning anymore, symbols of survival. Each one bloomed differently. Each one had its own scar. Each one had been buried and came back anyway. I hung a silver wind bell above the front door. It chimed when women walked through for the first time, and I told them the same thing every time. You're not here to die. You're here to remember who you were before they tried to kill you. Some of them cried. Some of them didn't speak for days. But eventually they all smiled, and when they did, I saw myself in every single one. Now every morning I hear the bell again. Soft, peaceful, unburdened, it doesn't count the days anymore. It keeps rhythm with my heart. I wake with the sunrise. I walk along the cliffs overlooking the ocean. I drink my tea without fear. And I watch the women at the sanctuary learn to breathe again. Sometimes I think of Corin and Marilyn, not with hate, just distance. They prayed for my death. They signed papers and poisoned tea and smiled while they buried me alive. But God let me live long enough to remember who I was, to reclaim my name, to stand in front of a room full of people and show them what resurrection looks like. And that was their punishment, not prison, not public shame, but knowing that the woman they tried to erase became the woman who saved others. I look at the wind bell outside my window. It sways in the morning breeze, 3 notes, clear and true. And I whisper the same thing I whisper every morning: thank you for letting me live.